Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with a video on Checkmate in the opening. It is the next video in the series Quick Chess Victories. The link to the playlist is up here. We're going to count down from checkmate in 10 moves to checkmate in 0 moves. How is that possible? Well, all will be revealed in the end. Let's get started. Checkmate in 10 moves occurred in a game between the second world champion Emanuel Lasker in a simultaneous tour exhibition he held in the USA in 1902. At that time, Lasker was the reigning world champion. He held the title from 1894 and 1921. Lasker's opponent was an amateur called C.R. McBride. The world champion opened with the e-pawn and McBride played e5, and we have the King's Gambit. Knight c6, knight f3, attacking the e-pawn twice, and black thought, let's defend it again. f6, not a good move. Bishop c4 developing, and now McBride took on f4, d4 striking in the center, g5 to protect that f-pawn, and now the world champion already has a winning sacrifice. Do you see it? If you want to put the video on pause, how does white break through already? He does so with knight takes g5, a very nice shot found by Lasker in a simultaneous display. What happens if you take the knight? Well, then we have a forced checkmate with queen h5 check, king e7 only move, queen f7 check, king has to go to d6, e5 check, you can only take that pawn, queen d5 check, king has to go back to e7, and this is checkmate in 11 moves, but that is only a variation. In the game after knight takes g5, black did not take on g5. I'm sure he had not seen this variation we just looked at, but he played h6, attacking the knight again, queen h5 check came anyway, and we have a forced checkmate. King e7, queen f7 check, king d6, e5 check, and black took with the f-pawn, and now the checkmate move with the knight is knight e4. Checkmate in 10 moves, that was quick. And we see that type of game a lot in simultaneous displays. A quick victory from Lasker in the King's Gambit. Now let's go one move quicker. We're going to look at a checkmate in 9 moves game. It was played by Harry Nelson Pillsbury, one of the most famous players in history, who won the tournament of Hastings 1895. And I still fondly remember Grandmaster Nigel Short being shocked that his co-commentator Ho Yifan did not know who Pillsbury was. Shame on her. It was played in the year 1900, 5 years after Pillsbury's greatest win, in a simultaneous display tour in Germany, and Pillsbury opened with the e-pawn. His opponent was Mr. Fernandez, and he played e5. We'll see a variation of the famous Legals mate in this game. Knight c3, knight c6, f4, d6, knight f3, a6. Nothing going on so far. Bishop c4, bishop g4, and Pillsbury took on e5. Black has played okay so far, but now he makes a big mistake. He should have recaptured here with the d-pawn, but he took with the knight, and that is a mistake. It looks logical, the knight is pinned, and it's attacking that bishop, but there is knight takes e5 anyway. Winning move. Yes, you give away the queen, and black couldn't believe his luck, and he took it, but then there is Legals mate, bishop takes f7 check. There's only one legal move for black, and on the 9th move, knight c3 to d5 is checkmate. Nice to see Legals mate in an actual game on the board, a lesson that Mr. Fernandez must have remembered forever. So that was checkmate in 9 moves. Let's go one move quicker, and we'll see an example of a checkmate in 8 moves. This example is not from an actual game, but it is a variation from the Owens Defense, which comes out on the board after e4 from white and then b6 from black. That's the Owens Defense. d4 taking the center, bishop b7, and then bishop d3 from white to protect the e-pawn, but black can put pressure on the e-pawn with f5. Attacking it twice, it's only defended once. And you cannot take on e5, right? Well, in this variation you can. The drawback is that black now takes on g2 and the rook in the corner is lost, but white has an attack with queen h5 check. g6 is the only move, the only legal move, and if you take that pawn, then black has to be careful. He has to find the only move, which is bishop g7, and the game goes on. He can make a big mistake by taking the rook, because then he gets checkmated by either g takes h7 or g7, and the king is trapped by the queen. But after f takes g6, there's another possibility. Knight f6 is possible, because if now this pawn plays, you can take the queen. White doesn't remove the queen, takes on h7 with check, and you have to take the queen, you have no choice, but then the bishop on d3 delivers a checkmate on the 8th move, bishop g6, and black is checkmated. Very nice. And let's go one move quicker again. Let's look at an example of checkmate in 7 moves. And in this example it is black that checkmates, so let's look at the game from the black side. It is a variation from the Italian opening. White opens e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, that is the Italian, and then knight d4 is possible, giving up on that pawn on e5. But white should not take it, because if he does, then black gets an advantage with the nice move queen g5. The g2 pawn is hanging, and the knight is hanging. But it looks like white has a way out. He can take on f7, right? Protected by the bishop and attacking queen and rook. And after queen takes g2, he can save his rook in the corner by playing rook f1. It looks like white is still okay, but he's not, because there is queen takes e4 check. And you have to interpose something on e2. If you interpose the queen, it will get taken by the knight. And if you interpose the bishop on the 7th move, do you see it? Yes, a smothered mate with knight f3. White is checkmated. The bishop is pinned, cannot take the knight. Checkmate in 7 moves in the Italian. We'll continue the countdown. Let's look at an example of checkmate in only 6 moves. And this example is again from the black side, so let's flip the board again. It is from the birds opening, which starts with f4, and then black can play in an aggressive way with e5. Giving up a pawn, f takes e5, d6, e takes, and bishop takes. Black has sacrificed a pawn for quick development, and now white already has to be careful. Knight f3 is the move here, but if you play knight c3, the game is already over. Can you believe it? We have played 4 moves because of the shot queen h4 check. And you only have one legal move, that is g2, g3, and that pawn just gets taken. We see a spectacular queen sacrifice. Queen takes g3 check with checkmate on the next move. You can also take with the bishop. It leads to the same thing, but it is less spectacular than a queen sacrifice. So let's look at that one. You have to take, and bishop takes g3 is checkmate in 6 moves in the birds opening. Let's take one more move off, and we're going to look at an example of checkmate in only 5 moves. It is a well-known trap in the Dutch defense. If you play the Dutch with black, you have to know this one. White opens d4, and then we have the Dutch with f5. One variation is to play the bishop to g5. And if you kick that bishop, the bishop goes to h4, and now black may think we want to trap that bishop with g5. If white moves to g3 and you think you'll trap the bishop with f4, then you find out you cannot really do that because of e3, because if you take the bishop, it is checkmate. The variation I wanted to show you is after g5. White ignores the attack on the bishop and just plays e4. If black doesn't know this trap and thinks white has gone crazy, gives away a piece, and I'm gonna take it with g takes h4, then we see that same checkmate move again. On the 5th move, queen d1 to h5 is checkmate, and white has won this game against the Dutch. The games are getting shorter and shorter. Let's look at an example of checkmate in only 4 moves. It is one of the most famous sequences in chess. It's called the Scholar's Mate. We all learn it when we start in chess. If you're new to chess, you may not have seen it yet. But once you've seen it, you'll never forget it. e4 from white, e5, the classical reply, bishop c4, bishop c5, no problem so far, and then queen h5, which is not a great move, bringing the queen out so early. If you think I'm gonna kick the queen, then you fell into a trap with queen takes e5 check, and the rook in the corner is lost. You have to interpose something on e7, and white takes the rook and has a big material advantage. But a scholar's mate is after queen h5, that black thinks I'm going to kick that queen back. Well, the queen is not going back. It will deliver checkmate on f7, the weakest point on the chessboard, the f7 square. Protected by the bishop, we have a mate in 4 moves, the scholar's mate, which is a different name in different languages. For example, in my language, Dutch, the translation would be the shepherd's mate. Checkmate in 3 moves, is that really possible? Yes, it is. But it's only possible in the fool's mate, and we have the fool's mate with d4, f5, again the Dutch defense, and if then white plays e4, that is a gambit. Black can take that pawn, but if he plays the worst move on the board, g7, g5, the game is over. With that move that we've seen a number of times now, queen h5. Black played up his own pawns, removing the protection of the black king, and that's why white can checkmate the black king in only 3 moves. And we can do it even 1 move quicker from the black side. So let's see how that works. From the black side, white plays g4. That is a rare move, but not a bad one. Black has many ways to reply, for example e6. And now bishop g2 has to be played, and we have a normal game. But if white plays the worst move on the board, f2, f4, the same happens as we just saw with mate in 3, but now there's mate in 2, because it is black who delivers a checkmate. Black wins, and this is the shortest game possible in a game of chess. Checkmate in 2 moves with black. We have counted down from 10 down to 2, and it would be a pity to stop there. Checkmate in 1 move is not possible in the opening, but I have another nice example for you. This is clearly not an opening position. In fact, there are some promoted pieces on the board. It is a composition from Leonid Ivanovich Kubel, who was a Russian chess composer. He composed more than 1500 endgame studies and problems, many of which were awarded first prize for their great beauty and original conception. He's generally considered one of the greatest of all endgame composers, and he was a chemical engineer by profession. He was born in 1891 and died of starvation in 1942 during the Nazi siege of Leningrad. And this is one of his famous problems. It is mate in 1. White to play and checkmate a black king in 1 move. Mate in 1 is always easy, right? Well, in this case it is not. I showed this composition before, and it's so unique that I want to do so again. It's important to note that white goes up the board, so we're looking at the position from the white side, so the pawns go up. For example, this pawn on d7 is about to promote on d8. But that would be an illegal move, because then the bishop on c8 gives check to the king on h3. So we cannot play that one. I will let you look at this position and see if you can find a checkmate in 1 move yourself. You can put your answers in the comment section, and I will reveal the answer in my next video on Sunday, February 14th, Valentine's Day, in the next installment of the Viewers Games. So checkmate in 1 in this position. Good luck with finding the right answer. And that leaves checkmate in 0 moves. Is that possible? Well, not from an opening position, of course, but I still found an example of this. It is this position. It's another composition. I don't know who the author is, but it's white to play and checkmate a black king in 0 moves. Well, that seems impossible. It looks like the quickest way white can checkmate a black king is in 3 moves, for example with c7, h3, black has no choice, c8 queen, h2, and then checkmate on c5, mate in 3, but quite a pointless composition. So we have to use our imagination here, and we'll have to look at what black's last move was, and white's reply to that move, and then we get the solution. So we will go 1 move back in time, because this is the only way to solve it. This is 1 move ago. The black pawn was on c7 and the white pawn was on b5, and black's last move was c7, c5. And white's reply was b takes c6 en passant. and we have the position we started with. But what white did not do yet is remove the pawn on c5 that he has just taken en passant. And once he's taken off that pawn, we see checkmate on the board. Checkmate in 0 moves, or as some say, checkmate in half a move. All white still had to do is remove that c-pawn from the board. Quite funny, but you may ask the question, could we not do the same on the other side of the board? So are there not two solutions? That black's last move was e7, e5, and that we took that pawn en passant with f5 takes e6, and then it would also be checkmate, right? So let's move the pieces one move back. Black played e7, e5, and then white checkmates with f takes e6, and we have two solutions. Do we really? No, we don't. As the solution with e7, e5 is not possible because of this pawn, the pawn on h4. If we look at the position carefully, we can see that the g6 pawn must have come from f7 and took something on g6. The e, g and h pawns are still on their initial squares, so this h4 pawn must have been the d pawn. But that is not possible. The d pawn will not be able to get to h4. It would only be able to get to h3. So that's why the solution to this mate in 0 problem is that black played up the c pawn and not the e pawn. As a solution with the e pawn would be with an illegal position. And there we have it, counting down from checkmate in 10 moves to checkmate in only 0 moves. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you did, I hope you give the video the thumbs up, that you'll subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel, and that you'll leave a comment. I will read them all and I will reply to them all. I'm looking forward to those comments on the solution of the mate in 1 problem. If you like this video, it would be great if you could share it on social media by clicking the share button on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter and on Facebook. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.